the House of the Bull concluded the first half of the 2025 season, with many teams introducing some upgrades and urgently seeking results to recover ground for the second half of the year. The result of this Grand Prix was similar to many other races this season, but it has been beneficial for some and completely disastrous for others, and even almost devastating. With the last updates of the season about to arrive. The race in Austria is over, but for us it's time to relive the most important moments that have happened to us in the House of the Bull. With this summary of the 2025 Austrian Grand Prix of Formula 1. This time, it seemed like we wouldn't have any surprises before the start of the race, since there were no grid penalties for the drivers. But this time, Lando Norris took pole position at one of his best circuits of the season. But a yellow flag ruined the chances for other drivers, like Piastri and Verstappen, preventing them from improving their last lap time, with Piastri qualifying third, while Verstappen dropped to 7th place, which was disastrous. His title hopes are already in jeopardy. Leclerc sneaked into 2nd place, becoming Lando Norris's first challenger when the lights went out. So the next day, Norris would have the chance to close the gap again in his fight. Meanwhile, Max would have to fight fiercely to maintain his championship chances, and Piastri would be looking for an error-free race to strengthen his position as the leader in the standings. But before the race started, now we would have a surprise. And that's because Carlos Sainz wanted to pull a Sonny Haynes move, coming out late for the formation lap. But the reality is that it seems he had brake problems and had to retire from the Grand Prix before it even started, causing the start to be aborted, and after 15 minutes. Now the cars would line up on the starting grid, the traffic lights would go out, and with that, the Austrian Grand Prix would begin. Norris had a pretty good start, covering Leclerc, who had better traction in the first few meters and boxed him in, allowing him to defend the lead in turn 1. And Piastri went around the outside to quickly take 2nd place in the race. However, coming to the top of turn 3, Antonelli acted like a mobster, as if he were a sniper. He braked too late and ruined Max Verstappen's race, crashing into him after this mistake, since with the late braking, he ended up taking him out, causing both his own retirement and Max Verstappen's. This brought out the safety car so the cars could be removed. The safety car would leave on lap 3. The Grand Prix action resumed promptly as Piastri began applying significant pressure on his teammate, constantly getting into drag reduction system range, not giving him a moment to breathe during these first few laps. By lap 11, Piastri attacked Norris on the uphill of turn 3 and overtook him, but after a bad exit past the drag reduction system zone, Norris counterattacked and regained the lead, giving us a beautiful battle between teammates, unseen for a long time. It was a good sequence and quite clean, at least in these early stages. Despite this defense from Norris, Piastri kept pushing, always staying within drag reduction system range, but never making things easy for Norris at any moment. And while this was happening in the first few laps, we also saw some interesting battles in the midfield group, like Gasly completely dropping off in pace, being overtaken by some rivals, Albon retiring from the Grand Prix, again due to cooling issues in his car, and Bortoleto consolidating himself within the top 10, doing a very good job while running in 7th position. In fact, Liam Lawson and Fernando Alonso were also having very good races within the top 10. And in fact, they were going to be the only drivers within these positions to try their one-stop strategy. Quite risky, but it could give them a very good result at the end of the Grand Prix if it ended up working. At the front, Piastri and Norris continued their fierce battle, with the Australian not relenting. But on lap 20, he tries to overtake him on the inside of turn 4 and makes a small mistake, forcing the inside, locking up the tires and taking himself out. A scare for McLaren, which simply left him with damage to the tire. But there was no contact between Norris and Piastri, causing Norris to pit on that same lap, but Piastri was stopped a few laps later, with the excuse that with clean air he should find his rhythm, trying to get as much of an advantage as possible for his second stint. But, at least personally, it seemed to me that after the scare Piastri gave them with the lockup, they wanted the fight to be separated a bit, at least during those Grand Prix stages. So Piastri would take until lap 24 to stop and would come out about 6 seconds behind Lando Norris. In that window of laps, Bortoleto pitted on lap 22, Leclerc on lap 25, and Lewis Hamilton on lap 26. After his stop, Bortoleto had to overtake some drivers, managing to get past Berman and Gasly to lose as little time as possible. Meanwhile, Hülkenberg moved up from the last position with a solid stint that allowed him to stay in the points positions, and he fought to stay in that position until the end of the race. And from this point on, the race stabilized a lot because we saw the Ferrari drivers overtake Lawson and Alonso, who were on a one-stop strategy. We also saw Piastri gaining a lot of time on his teammate, getting to within 3 seconds of him. We also saw some incidents like the contact between Tsunoda and Colapinto, for which he was given a 10-second penalty, and for laps 33 and 34. Lawson and Alonso would make their only pit stop to put on the hard tire, aiming to reach the end. Hülkenberg held out until lap 43 to make his stop, while Leclerc, Bortoleto and Hamilton pitted on the same lap, 50 and 51 respectively. It wasn't until lap 52 that Norris would enter the pits for his final stop, switching to the medium tire after having used the hard one. And now, 1 lap later, Piastri had a quick stop, emerging just over 3 seconds behind his teammate. However, he finishes behind Tsunoda and Colapinto, who were battling on track. Both of them are shown the blue flags, but they were in a fight. When they reached turn 3, Piastri was so focused on battling Tsunoda that he didn't notice Colapinto, despite being informed of his presence over the radio. He tries to lap him on the straight of the third drag reduction system sector, but Colapinto closes the door and sends him onto the grass in a move without consequences, but that made Piastri lose out. A second and a half behind his teammate. Ultimately, Colapinto received a 5-second penalty for this, and everyone's eyes were on the battle between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, where lap after lap between lapped traffic and other issues. Piastri managed to get within less than 2 seconds of his teammate, but was never able to get into drag reduction system range, giving us a nice battle, where Norris tried to keep his teammate out of this device's range. And Piastri was pushing really hard, looking for an opportunity to make that move that would give him the victory. The final laps provided midfield excitement as Bortoleto overtook multiple drivers to regain top positions, overtaking drivers like Hajar or Ocon, and getting to the rear wing of Fernando Alonso in the last laps, where he started the battle to take 7th place from him in the race. But no matter how hard he tried, Gabriel Alonso defended himself very well and didn't give him a single chance to take the position at any moment, with the Spanish driver being very accurate with his defenses. Since the fight between Norris and Piastri got in the way, this played in Alonso's favor. But even more so for Liam Lawson, who in 6th place managed to pull up to 4 seconds ahead of the Spaniard and defended his 6th position quite well in this Grand Prix. But when lap 70 arrived, Lando Norris resisted the attack from his teammate and achieved another victory that brought him closer in the fight against his teammate. Third victory of the season for Lando Norris, who shakes off the disaster in Canada in a good way. Taking pole position with a monster lap, not giving in to the pressure from his teammate, and managing to cross the finish line first to win a race he really needed to regain confidence, and hopefully he can keep it up for the rest of what's left in this 2025. The rest of the top 10 of the Austrian Grand Prix would finish as follows. Oscar Piastri finished 2nd, unable to secure the win despite having better pace. 3rd place for Leclerc in a solid and trouble-free weekend. 4th position for Lewis Hamilton in a good weekend, but far from his teammate. 5th place for George Russell in a difficult weekend for Mercedes. 6th place for a surprising Liam Lawson, 7th position for a great Fernando Alonso, 8th place and his first points for Gabriel Bortoleto. 9th position for Nico Hülkenberg. With an incredible comeback from last place and closing out the top 10, Esteban Ocon taking the last point for the North American team. I really enjoyed today's race. At the beginning, we had some chaos and good battles, especially the fight at the front between the McLaren drivers. The race stabilized in the middle, but had an entertaining ending, with the many battles we saw on track and the fight between the leaders still open, which in the end, even though we didn't see them battling on track, was extremely interesting. My rating for this Grand Prix will be 8. Good race, where honestly I have to admit that I liked it, although I understand those who didn't, but at least I did. It left a good taste in my mouth without saying it was the best race of the year. My drivers this time are Liam Lawson, Nico Hülkenberg, and forgive me Bortoleto, but Hülkenberg's comeback was absolutely brutal. But especially Lando Norris, today I really needed it. A victory like this, staying solid without falling apart, will definitely help him come out much stronger for the second half of the season. If he manages to maintain his mental strength and doesn't make any more mistakes for the rest of the season. My disappointments of the day are Antonelli and Yuki Tsunoda. I understand Antonelli is a rookie, but his mistake today has been extremely costly for him and his team, which doesn't help his confidence at all, as he's having a very inconsistent season. He has very high peaks, but sometimes he makes mistakes like today's, which have been devastating for Mercedes. Tsunoda's slow pace in the second Red Bull car is affecting his confidence despite the complexity of handling it. And today, he made quite a few silly mistakes, making an already very difficult race even worse, since he started from the back of the grid. He was told not to underestimate the challenge of moving up to the second Red Bull seat, and it seems that, as expected, the challenge is overwhelming him. And with that, we conclude the summary of the 2025 Austrian Grand Prix of Formula 1. But this is where I ask you, what did you think of this Grand Prix? Did you like it? Were you disappointed? Who were your drivers of the day and your disappointments of the race at the Red Bull Ring circuit? Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. I bid farewell. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, enable notifications to know when I upload new videos, and share this with your friends. I also invite you to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The links will be in the video description. And I'll see you next week for the preview of the 2025 Formula 1 British Grand Prix. Thanks for tuning in. See you later.